Hey folks, Scott Bradley here, and welcome to Tour Bus University. Each episode has two parts, the free part that you're hearing now, and a subscriber-only bonus part that you can access by subscribing to the Tour Bus University Patreon. Today, I'm joined by Aubrey Logan, a singer, songwriter, trombonist that creates some of the most eclectic music that can somehow still be considered pop. She's a fun, upbeat person with an insanely creative mind, and even in conversation, you can hear her improvising and coming up with clever ideas on the fly. Our conversation covered a lot of ground, learning to think differently about genre, arranging and writing songs, finding an identity as an artist, and how weird Los Angeles can be sometimes. So please welcome Aubrey Logan. What's up, cool. Aubrey? How's it going?
Hey, Scott. It's going great. How are you doing? I'm
doing great. I mean, considering, I think I'm doing quarantine wrong because I see that there's a lot of people that are just like, oh, just stay home, just chill, and I'm staying home, but I'm not chill at all. I'm just busy all the time. I'm making like a billion things.
Of course, you would be busy all the time making a billion things, which you should be, and I commend you for it. I think that this is an opportunity. I mean, it sucks, but. Yeah. But it's an opportunity to try some new things too. And then when you start to try something new, you end up getting lost in trying that something new. At least that's what's happening to me. I don't know what you're up to.
I thought actually as soon as the quarantine hit and everything, one of my first thoughts was like, oh man, I wonder what Aubrey's doing because she is never home. Like you are like the antithesis of like a quarantine person. Like how many dates on the road did you do last year?
I don't know how many shows there were. Some of them were with you in Australia, but gosh, I don't, maybe 100 shows, but that adds up to about 6 months being gone because as you know, you have fly dates and you have all sorts of travel days and everything. Sure, so not every night of that is a show. So I kind of calculate it by cumulative days away from home
I think what I should have asked you is like, how many times have you actually been home and like slept in your own bed?
Right. That's I don't, not very many times, not more now than ever because of, at the time of this recording, we are in the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm on the road a lot and mostly because of you. I have Postmodern Jukebox to thank for that because it was when I started touring with Postmodern Jukebox in earnest that I also started putting my solo shows at the end of every single Postmodern Jukebox tour, right? And essentially went and saw those same fans every time. So that of course explains the never home thing.
Yeah, we'll get into that because that's such a smart way to tour. We'll get into that, but let's take a step back. I think what makes you really great for this kind of podcast is that on one hand, you're a super rare breed of artist. Like you defy classification. You're playing trombone, you're scatting like Ella, but then you're doing like James Brown funk and doing cartwheels on stage, and then you're writing beautiful like Broadway ballads, essentially. Like
oh my gosh, thank you, Scott.
All kinds of different things. So you're one of these artists that's so hard to pin down. But yet on the other hand, I'd say that most people know an artist that is like so far off in their own lane and they're doing something that's completely different than everybody else. But usually those people have trouble putting the pieces together. Like I can think of so many people that I went to school with and they're doing a unique thing, but they couldn't quite find the way to bring it to the world, to present it. However, you did, which I think is super rare. And I think
Thank you.
So I want to talk a lot about, that's more of a statement than a question, but I want to talk a lot about, the challenges that you face in putting something so unique into the world. I know that you went to Berkeley and by that point, were you already, had you figured out what you wanted to do or were you still kind of learning in the learning phase? Not that it ever ends.
Sure. Yeah, I'm still in the learning phase, but I could back up even before that to really explain the Berkeley years, the college years for me.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's back up a little further and go to age, 7, 8. I grew up in the Seattle area and I got my first job was singing in musical theater. Does that shock you? I don't know.
Wow.
So my first ever gig was musical theater in my community, in my area. So the Fifth Avenue Theater, the Village Theater, for all of y'all up in the Northwest. I say y'all because my mom's from Virginia. It's very confusing. And so I started in musical theater and the only reason I did that at the time was because I was so in need to get on stage and sing. It was ingrained, the natural thing. You just got to do what you're going to do. And there wasn't, we didn't live in Nashville. We didn't live in LA. We didn't live in New York. So there wasn't like, let's become a singer-songwriter. There wasn't that around. But there were auditions for shows. So that's how I got started. And then when I started to do those auditions for shows, and start to actually do the shows, what became ingrained in me was prepare for a show, to drill it, get everything figured out, and then go make a presentation. Of course, I was learning some of the greatest songs we all know, the classic show tunes that we all know, Cole Porter, Gershwin, Rodgers and Hammerstein, and all of that. And that was getting drilled in me at a really young age, that repertoire. However, I attribute the vast eclectic taste to my parents and they are music teachers, but it wasn't necessarily because they were teaching music that got me into it. It was because they were playing all of these songs on the radio, on my dad's homemade member tapes playlists constantly. And we'd be cleaning the house together and as a family, and we were all required to participate, and I had no siblings, so it was just the three of us. And my dad would play these playlists of Beethoven and the Spice Girls. No, that was my request. And Michael Jackson and Dolly Parton and the Eagles and Stevie Wonder and Count Basie, all in a span of 60 minutes. And when you're a kid, nothing is unusual to you. So I just thought that was normal. I just thought that's music. Yeah. So when I was little, it didn't occur to me that this was a problem in branding later on in life. I had no idea. And so I just had a high standard of good musicality, and I thank my parents for that. Truly, I thank them for that. And I went back to school with my friends in the 7th grade, and they all were in band. And that was a huge problem for me because I was without friends and 12. That's a problem. So my mom was the choir director at my school, and there was no way I was going to be in choir. No way, because I wasn't going to have my mother as my teacher. And she asked her band director colleague, can Aubrey join the band? And he's like, sure. What does she play? And well, nothing. She doesn't. But she reads music, and I did because of the past stuff and because a little remedial piano. And then he's like, oh man, she's not, she's behind. She didn't do beginning band. I didn't do beginning band. But my dad played trumpet, and he brought home a couple other instruments from his school where he was a principal at the time. I tried a saxophone. I tried a trumpet. I tried a flute. I tried a trombone. And the trombone just made a bunch of sense. I could make a sound on it. It sounds like Count Basie, which my dad would play in the house. It sounds like Chicago. I heard a trombone in that band. So I picked it. And then I started playing jazz. Now, before that, it was musical theater and pop all my life, which I loved. And my parents would play jazz, but I wasn't all into it. But then I started to play jazz because of the trombone. And because I started to play jazz, I started to sing jazz. Because I realized a lot of these songs are the same. These Cole Porter songs that I'd already been hearing. Right. These jazz musicians are doing this song, except they're doing it a different way. They're doing it however they want. So you
started by singing these standards as standards, right? Like in the music theater sense. And then you came to it.
Yeah, as show tunes.
And then you approached it as jazz. That's kind of funny. That's I mean, I started with that kind of stuff too, in a sense. Like I started, when I was learning piano, I really got into all those standards because I was into early jazz, and there are standards for a reason. They teach you so much about music, and they teach you so much.
They do.
But I started with jazz, so I don't think I ever got to really appreciate them or hear them in the Broadway setting.
Well, and it's a different approach at Broadway. Everything is cue to cue, and everything is pre-planned and pre-directed, which is, and you have to sing it very clearly. You're not supposed to play with the time. And that's understandable because you're communicating an entire story very plainly to an audience.
It's the story first, in a sense.
Right. And so that's sort of why it became this sort of mishmash of things. And then when I got to college, which was at Berklee College of Music in Boston, then it was just an explosion of other genres because that place was, peer driven.
Yeah.
people from all over the world playing every genre, and I just participated in all of it.
Yeah.
And I never in my brain did I separate, a genre from another genre. I never do that. My internal interpretation is this is music. Treat it as such. Deliver the message. If I hear a funky groove, I'm going to sing differently because I'm inspired by that funky groove. And then if I hear Spangalang, that's music speak for swing drummer, I'm going to be inspired to change the way I treat it. You talked about it being a challenge to communicate that to people. And as far as it being pretty diverse, I did have to find a common thread. So there was two ways for me that I feel like it started to translate to the audience of, oh yeah, Aubrey's expect the unexpected with Aubrey kind of a thing. And one is, if I'm going to be inconsistent, I should at least be consistent about it.
Gotcha. So you built it as it's a feature, not a bug.
Right. So that's one thing. People are like, oh, I'm starting to hear, I even heard from somebody the other day, from some publicist, like, oh, what's Aubrey going to do next? And I kind of went, thank you, God, finally somebody said that, because that's
what you've been waiting for.
That's right. That's what I've been waiting for. It means people are starting to realize, Aubrey's going to try a few things and she's going to experiment with music. But the other cool thing is even the show itself is what matters, because that's when I'm able to tell the story from beginning to end in that you have 90 minutes, which to us is not very long. We're like, we got more to do. I have 90 minutes to take people on a journey. That's how I see it. And that's not a disjointed journey. Even though you're hearing multiple genres, even though you're hearing left and right turns and twists and turns and everything, when they come to the actual show, nobody ever goes, oh, that was a multiple genre show. They were just like, no, that's just the story. And so that's the common thread.
Right. Well, I think, and that was great because you gave us a lot of stuff. I mean, there's a lot to think about. There's a lot that we can kind of parse through. Let's take a jump back to college, okay? Because I think that college is, I know for me that was an eye-opening experience in terms of genre as well. Like for me, I was coming into school as a jazz major. And then I left I wound up switching out into music business just because I felt like jazz it wasn't the best label for what I was doing. And I'm sure that you were the same way, that you weren't quite in one. Now, did you major in jazz, or were you majoring in something else?
Well, technically my major is trombone performance.
Okay.
But I did not go to I did not go to a traditional conservatory. I went to a contemporary music conservatory. So technically my study is trombone performance, contemporary music. Because Berklee doesn't do, at least at the time, I think they do now, because now now they're in collaboration with Boston Conservatory. But at the time, they were two separate schools. Okay. And when they were two separate schools, Berklee is not a classical music school at all. So I didn't have that option at that school. I realized I was okay with that by the time I got there, because I dabbled in, I kind of like opera, and I studied it a little bit. Then I decided no, and I stuck with it. Now, the fact that I was a trombone performance major is really just a technicality, because I sang constantly while I was there. Right. And like I mentioned before, with so many different fellow students, I was in a band with faculty. We sang Manhattan Transfer type close harmonies. When I got there, I realized, and to my comfort, I realized that the word jazz, it's like saying the word world. Well, where? What kind? What era? What kind? So even though and when I say pop, I don't mean one specific sound. I mean verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. That's what pop means to me.
Yeah, I think of it just pop being something that isn't too esoteric. It's such a range. It encompasses Britney Spears, but it's also the Beach Boys. I think that probably the easiest way to think about it. Yeah, it's a form. The verse chorus thing is, that's an easy way. But even beyond that, I think it's just stuff that is accessible to more or less most people. You don't need to have any special knowledge going in. I feel like with jazz, you need a little bit of special knowledge to fully appreciate it. Yeah,
and then that it has a huge range.
Right.
So some people, there are certain ways jazz can be treated that's very accessible to very many people.
Yeah.
That's the kind of, for lack of a better word, jazz that I play. What allows me to still be called a jazz artist, which I am, is the fact that I am playing improvisational music.
Right.
But the reason non-jazz people come to my shows is because of what you mentioned. I still like to tell a story that everyone can relate to. And within that, have an element of improvisation. So even if I wrote a what is very, very much a pop song. I mean, you listen to it, you're like, this is a pop song.
Yeah.
When we play it at the shows, we're not playing it exactly like the record. We interpret it every time. That's another kind of answer to the question you asked before. What was your challenge and how did you deal with it? That's another reason why it works, is because the jazz people still get that high level of musicality and improvisation. And so does my band, because they hate playing the same show every night. Because they're jazz musicians. Of
course.
And yet there's still that element where I want people to feel like they can relate to me. I don't want to play jazz for me. I want to play it with the audience, with the people who are listening on the radio, with the people on Spotify, you know?
Right. Well, let's dig into this a little bit more, because I think that you brought up a really good point. And I think that what you're doing is you're bringing the audience up to your level. You know, you're not putting on something and being like, if you don't get this, you don't get this. You're taking an audience. Way to say it. You're taking an audience that maybe doesn't have too much familiarity with jazz or the specific genres that you're doing. You're giving it kind of like a nice candy coating, in the sense that you're like, don't be scared. Just, you know, we're gonna go on a journey. I'm gonna show you all this stuff. You don't have to worry that this is jazz and you don't understand jazz. And I know just from doing Postmodern Jukebox, there's a lot of people that would come after a show and just be like, I didn't know that I liked jazz. I thought that there was a type of music I don't like. And I think that on some level, the marketing of jazz had kind of gone to a place where it became this cool club and you were excluded if you didn't understand it.
Well, lucky for them, I'm excluded from all the clubs. No, it's funny you say that. I'm not in any of the clubs. I've gotten invited to play in Postmodern Jukebox, which is let's take brand new current hit pop songs and make it sound vintage in a very specific, very awesome way. So I'm kind of in that club. I'm sort of in the, am I in the Postmodern Jukebox club?
You're absolutely, yeah. It's
okay, cool.
I think
I'm in that club.
I used to call it Lawrence Welk with 100% more twerking. That was the official definition of our live show in the early days.
Oh my gosh. I promise I was not the one twerking on your show. But I might have been twerked upon. But I am sort of in the PMJ club, but I don't have all my feet in there because I veer from that, I guess. And
well,
then
nobody should. By design, I think that everybody should be. Right. The reason that you're selected really to go out and tour with us as an ambassador, essentially, is because it's fun to see you kind of come into our world for a bit, then you're off on your tour, then you're doing your thing. So actually, what you're saying is basically the whole conception for PMJ. It's like everybody
it's beautiful.
Is people without a club, or they're between worlds,
yes.
The industry likes to put everybody in boxes. I mean, for classification,
well, people like that.
It's easy.
Everybody likes to do that with everything. And I got invited on Dave Kaz's show too, which is a totally different, that's another club. And it's a very cool club.
Right.
And then I've gotten, and I can go do an avant-garde jazz jam session, but I don't quite. So it's all these different kinds of things. I love the way you said that we can bring the audience up to our level, because people are a lot more capable of listening
100%.
to good music than I think the mainstream gives them credit for.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's not shocking that so many people are into jazz. Because think about it. I mean, it was the dominant music for a long period of time. I mean, we had a solid couple decades where jazz was it, and the public was obsessed with it. There's nothing that could have changed that drastically in our DNA that all of a sudden we can't appreciate this kind of music.
People still want to feel that real stuff. And it's cool because it defies generational gaps. I mean, I think one of my happiest moments was seeing a grandpa high five his 10-year-old grandkid at my show. And I'm kind of going, this is perfect. This is exactly what I want to see. And I see it in Postmodern Jukebox shows all the time. I mean, it's bringing people together. And don't we need that right now a little bit?
100%. Oh, absolutely. I'm with you. We're doing good work. We're doing good stuff.
Yeah.
So I want to jump ahead. You know, so you went to school and you were doing pretty much every type of genre, every type of music, and you were creating your own stuff as well. What was the turning point where you kind of realized that you could do something as a solo artist? That's a pretty scary jump for a lot of people, you know. Where was that turning point for you?
It wasn't a turning point for me because I always wanted to do it.
Okay.
When I was 6 years old, I was crying in my bed, and I had gone to bed and my mom came up an hour into me going to bed and I was crying, and she asked me what was wrong. And I said, Mom, where am I going to find a band? I need a bass player. I need a piano player, and I was sobbing. So that actually carried in to the real life. To answer your question, the turning point to get me to finally go for it was when I kind of circled back to that right at the tail end of college. And I'm going, I've played with a lot of bands in school. I've done a lot of gigs, but I have my music that I need a jazz combo to play. But I have a problem. I need to arrange all of this. So I just took all of the music theory knowledge I possibly had, all the piano skills I had under my fingers, and went, well, I want the band to sound like this. I'm gonna have to get to some paper and arrange some music. I need to just develop my organizational arranging skills right now because I have no choice.
Wow.
And that's what I had to do. So that's how I became an arranger, because I didn't want anybody else to arrange it because it was part of my creative process.
Sure,
I want to communicate it this way. That's what got me to become a solo artist. Honestly, that's what got me to finally go, okay, I have a band playing what I want them to play, and with a bunch of freedom because they're experts at their craft and they have creative prowess because they are, even though these are pop songs, these are jazz musicians, and I want them to play it like themselves. And that also created the sound. So then it was like, well, I'm gonna have to lose a bunch of money and get on a stage and pay a band out of nothing and make this work somehow. And it just started small and small and got a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger. And then sometimes big, huge explosions of breakthrough, like the Montreux Jazz Festival helped.
Yeah.
I won a competition there. Postmodern Jukebox was one of the biggest breakthroughs of my life because you had me on your tours and on your YouTube channel. And suddenly I had another audience. And then it gets a little, okay, I get to hire a tour manager maybe because I have enough money for that. Okay, let's try that. So little by little by little, the major like, poof, I'm an artist came when I finally went, I've got to do this myself.
Right. So let me stop you right there, because I think that there's a lot of people that are musicians that maybe don't consider themselves arrangers, and they feel that arranger, that's a title that you need to go to school for, or you need to, but I mean, it's not really the case. You don't really need any kind of special, like I never took any arranging classes.
I didn't either.
It's something that you figure out how to do. And there are some people that are arrangers. You could consider James Brown. I mean, he's an arranger. You know?
Absolutely.
All these kind of iconic performers, they had a sense of what they wanted the band to do. And as long as you have a way of communicating it to the band, it doesn't mean you have to write every note. And I mean, I know that what you do with your arrangements is the same thing what I do. I mean, I leave a lot to the imagination in the sense that I'm booking specific players to play on something, and I know their sound. So it's just about organizing that and having them, do that sound in certain places. And I think that that's a really important detail, because I think when we think of arranging, we think of just the traditional big band arrangement, which is very notation heavy. And certainly when I write for horns, I'm doing that kind of stuff. But there's another type of arranging, which just means it's just organizing the sound. That's really all it is. And if you have a vision for something and you can communicate it, you're an arranger.
Exactly. And sometimes that happens in real time. people don't write anything down, or they just write chords down and say go, and then we'll decide where the hits are when we're together. Probably
Right.
James Brown did it that way.
Yeah.
He's arranging on the recordings. He's like, stay here. He's
Yeah,
like shouting
exactly.
what to do next.
He's
in
shouting
every
the commands.
single-
It's pretty brilliant.
like,
Yeah.
Now get down now. We're
And he's
just
like,
arranged.
and he's like
and we
docking
got it
their
on
pay,
recording.
docking their pay
Yeah.
if they make a mistake in
Right.
real time. Like, that's amazing.
Right. And then that togetherness factor comes into a lot of arranging. And then some people, and it's kind of about personal preference. I like working alone. It's my preference, and I like coming up with these things. So I'll probably write more chords and more hits than maybe some other people, but that's okay, because you get together and I'll still change, and then we'll change it again when we are together rehearsing it.
Right. It's a fluid process. And I guess you would say that a song is a more malleable form. You can have so many different arrangements of the same song. And I'm interested to know if, have there been times where you've written a song and then you've arranged it one way, but then when you play it live, you do something completely different with it?
Yes, many times. So the song to pivot to songwriting, that's more, the song comes first.
Yeah.
And the point of the song comes first. And when there's lyrics involved, those are pretty much, that's it. We're not changing those because we're telling this story. And writing lyrics is a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother podcast. But essentially, that's much more difficult for me. That's a we do that. We are deciding these lyrics. End of story. These never change. That's a craft.
Right.
However, once you have the song, the arrangement is for the song. It serves the song. You're going to communicate it this way in this mood, because the same lyrics can mean something different to you at different times in your life. Yesterday by the Beatles is not exactly something that an 18-year-old sings the same way as a 60-year-old.
Right, yeah.
Because the song is so good. The song is so good. So you might have, you are able to play it in several different ways. The Gershwin songs that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, how many times have they been arranged differently?
You've heard so many different arrangements of those, but that's a testament to how good the song is.
Yeah.
But the answer to your question is yes, absolutely. We play them so many different ways, and whoever comes to those shows are going to hear something else than the person that came to the show the night before, even if it's subtle.
Yeah. Well, let's talk more about the songwriting process or how you approach it, because it sounds like, and I'm sure that this is the case with, most songwriters, every word has meaning to you. Every note is intentional when you're writing a song. You're stripping something down to its essence when you're writing a song. You're stripping all the stuff down to capture to tell a story, to capture a certain mood. Now, that seems like that's a very personal process, of course. Right?
Yes.
Because it's so hard to write a pop song.
It's so hard.
But
it's because you're forced to be simple, and simple is hard.
Simple is very hard. Absolutely. So how do you approach...
Especially when you want to say.
Yeah. So how do you approach when you're sitting down to write a song and you have a vague kernel of an idea? How do you expand upon that, and how do you make that into a song?
Well, for example, I'll have an idea, and that idea might be lyrical, or that idea might be a short, tiny little melody, or it might be a very fun rhythmic punch. Okay, I'll talk about the song I wrote called Laundry, which is not deep. It's very fun, and some songs are just fun. So I came up with You'll do the laundry.
Oh, this is the one you did on our stage it.
I did.
That was amazing.
I did. And
that was awesome.
Thank you.
That was great.
And
you had a dance move for it and everything.
Thank you.
My mom watched and she loved it.
That came from the lyrics. Yeah, I love your mom.
She's amazing.
Oh man. Yeah, and so that little idea came, and I'm going, well, this has to be a whole song because that's so groovy. And so now you have a challenge. So the idea comes first, because that's not hard. It's not hard to come up with fun, good feeling ideas. We're walking around, we're inspired. Now, okay, now you have to write the story of that idea. And I'm going, okay, there's a story here. I know there is. If you love me, you'll do the laundry. That is a funky Prince song. I'm already thinking of a reference there, right? So then the process fleshes out, well, okay, is that the chorus or is that the verse? So then you make a series of choices. Then once you have a shell of what that series of choices is, then you get to fill in the lyrics for the story. Now, in that case, it was like, well, this is a funky blues. So the music's already written. That's not the hard part. Not for me.
Yeah.
The hard part is the lyrics, because you have so much to say. So then I'll write out everything I have to say about this story. All right. Well, she doesn't like it when men are too flattering. So write that down. But she prefers her own husband. That's probably good. And because he's quiet. Okay, cool. That's cute. Write that down. But then you have all these words. You have too many words. Mm-hmm. Then you have to narrow it down to a tiny little chorus and say very few things, but say everything. And that's actually true of not just fun party songs, which are easier to do. And then there's a song that I'll do on your other stage at show for the 50s prom that is far more heartfelt and took me forever to get it down to very simple, relatable phrases. Again, the music was written already because we have enough, we know all that stuff. The lyrics are I had to rewrite them hundreds of times before it was simple enough.
Wow.
And before a listener could go, oh, I've already thought of the situation in my head that I relate to what you just said. Because I didn't want that song to just be about me, because it wasn't just about me.
Yeah. So I mean, that must come back to you studying the standards for so many years, because that's what they had to do. It was economy of words.
For sure.
They would write to fit a melody, I think, in general. I think that back in the day, I might be mistaken.
Yes. It's
a very old tradition. I'm sure that when you're writing a ballad and you're having to put so much emphasis into what you just described, simplifying the lyrics to the point that it can be relatable to everybody. I'm sure that, that comes from your years of study of that stuff. Like, it's got to be.
Yeah, it's been a long process since day one, for sure. It all counts.
Yeah. So how do you know when a song is done?
When the song is done, you just know it's done. That's it. That's the word. That's what makes everybody happy.
Yeah.
That's actually easy to know. It's just hard to get to.
I want to go back to where we're talking about where everything was taken off for you and you were starting to be able to tour on your own. One of the things that I saw that you did really good through this whole process as you were putting out your own solo stuff is on social media. You just engage your fan base in such a clever way and such an earnest way. And I think that really makes such a huge difference in any artist that's willing to put in that kind of time. So I want to talk a little bit about how you personally approach social media and, understanding that just a simple act of putting out original music, I mean, that's difficult. In some ways, it's easier to put out a cover because people have a reference point for it. For original music, people have no reference point, and then they really have to care about you, the person.
Yes.
You, the artist. And so how do you approach social media?
Again, it goes back to the show. So my show is a story, and there's banter between the songs, and there's my biggest fans know that I am a little bit over the fakery of show business. I'm not a fan of it. However, I do it for a living. So when they come to the show, they all know that she's doing this with a wink and a smile. Like everything's a little bit of a joke, but it's serious, but it's very serious. So online, I do the same thing. I have to make it the same. For example, I post you know how when you go on Instagram, you see these glamorous photos of women and they're like so hot, and then you look at their caption and it's some inspiring quote?
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Why?
Is there a generator for that? Yeah. What is it? Is there like a quote generator?
What did I miss here? So I happen, and it's also my job to be on social media, which I also find completely stupid.
Can you imagine Jimi Hendrix? What would his Instagram be?
Right.
Or Miles Davis.
So I've written songs to that effect. They all are about this. All of them. I mean, all of them. And when I go online now, I'll just be consistent with my message. I'll post some glam photo of myself and I'll write a caption like, insert caption here, aren't I cute? I'll be like, this is honest. Let's be honest. I'm posting the hottest photo of myself I can possibly find. And I'll make that the caption. This is the cutest picture of me I found today. Because and the fans get it because it's consistent with the songs are. And I feel awkward being glamorous. I feel it feels funny. Not everybody feels that way, but I feel that way. And at least I can make fun of it consistently. And I do it on socials. So when a fan, and bless their heart, when new fans come up, they don't get the joke yet. They don't get it yet. They're like, I don't know what they think, but I find showbiz a little silly and I do it for a living.
Well, it's crazy. It's a crazy business. I mean, we're just playing pretend, in a sense.
Right. We're playing pretend.
Like, we're putting on shows.
Yeah. And all of my songs are about how I'm sick of playing pretend. And so at least I can be consistent. Our dear friend, Ariana Savalas, who is one of my dearest friends, she has a different social media persona, but it's still funny because she is glamorous and she'll make fun of that. And it's so great. And she'll even banter with me and troll my account for our collective fans. So she'll
she's
go
such
on
a
photo of mine.
She's like, that's her. It's actually her.
It's her. It's actually her. And we'll have fake fights on the internet for fun, but it's all a joke because everyone who knows us knows we love each other. And she'll go on one of my makeup lists, no makeup posts or whatever. And she'll be like, oh, you're just the girl next door, aren't you? She'll post something like, wow, you're so backhanded compliment. She'll be like, you're so approachable. And you know what? I kind of am. Okay, I'm gonna be consistent. I really do think consistency is key. Even though I'm not consistent in my genre, I'm definitely consistent in the fact I like a good high standard of music. It's important because my life, my career is the fans that have found me on social media through you, through Postmodern Jukebox, through finding me on YouTube, through whatever, stumbling across whatever. That's my life. Thank you. And I'm going to interact with you.
That's what defines an artist in a sense.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we make music for the people. I mean, that's the tradition. So it is important to really create this world for your fans. And, and that goes for social media too. And even for artists that don't like to use social media, you still want to, you got to engage with your fans somehow. Social media is the way that we do in the 21st century. And I know that it's probably not the preferred way for most people, but this is part of the tradition of being an artist is you're cultivating this fan base and you're kind of providing for them. So I love watching what you do on social media because every so often I'll see, you do a funny post like that or just some kind of clever, some kind of, I can't think of an example because you've done so many of them, but just some kind of clever thing to engage people. And then you see everybody in the comments and they reference certain things in your show and they reference certain things in your albums. And then, it's cool because then it's like you're stepping into this world, this club. You created your own club.
Thank you. I learned from the best. I'm talking to him right now.
Well, I appreciate that. I just had too much free time on my hand. So now what is next for you? Actually, before we go into what's new for you, let's talk about the most recent album that you've put out.
So the album is called Where the Sunshine is Expensive. It got to #1 on Billboard, and that is because of the fans.
It's amazing. That's so awesome. Without a label or anything, right?
There was a small label that joined forces, but even so, us as artists, we have such big visions that I ended up funding 2/3 of it because I want to do more. That's how we are.
Totally.
And so we recorded it in a studio, but we recorded it live with an audience. So we had the best of the control of the studio, but the takes were all live. So we did not do any overdubbing. We had 3 background singers in a room together. Wow. No stacking, nothing like that. So we pushed play. A lot of it's on YouTube because we had video on us. The album is all about LA and all about kind of what we talked about before. so much of the songs are about, there's a lot of facade in this showbiz, or in being a lawyer, or in being a mom, or in being whatever it is your life is. A lot of us are going around faking trying to be the best because we have that pressure on us. Let's sing about it, you know?
Well,
so that's
like,
what it's about.
I guess that's LA in general is, you think of how many people move to LA to kind of create a new persona for themselves.
Yeah.
And it's
so
very
the album
interesting.
is about LA. Yeah. So, and they can find everything at aubreylogan.com, not just that album, but all the others and all my social media. Instagram will link you. Facebook will link you there too.
Great.
YouTube, everything. aubreylogan.com is the hub for that. And there's a mailing list. And if they sign up, they'll know when we're let out to go play again, you know, and I'll let them know. But yeah, that's what that album is about. And it's, you know, we recorded it at East West Studios in LA, where Frank Sinatra recorded a bunch of stuff and then a bunch of stuff in the 70s was recorded there. And we basically recorded it with the same techniques that they would have used in 1976.
No kidding.
You know, the funk, everything from pushing play and playing live to having all of it was really had that essence. And there's a lot of Rhodes keyboard on there and a lot of funky guitar. So it sounds that way. So that's what
was that
was
intentional?
All about.
Was there a certain reason that you picked that specific sound? You know, this kind of 70s.
I can't get enough keyboards.
Yeah,
I can't. It's personal. It's personal preference, and it's that I love keyboards so much.
You know, I got a Rhodes when I was in high school. I think it was like my freshman year.
Such a
I
pretty
bought a
sound.
Rhodes and I got it off of, I think it was eBay, and I got it for like $150. This is around the time you couldn't give away a Rhodes. It wasn't cool yet, and it's so crazy.
Is.
But it was during the period of time where nobody wanted this big heavy keyboard. So I got it for $150, and we got shipped. I remember it got shipped in my driveway in my parents' house, and I had to like drag the package into the house, and it was so heavy. Like they're beastly keyboards. They're so heavy.
Yeah, they're insane. I mean, now we have beautiful Nords that play sounds really convincingly, and I love those too. And
but there's something about a Rhodes, like the action. It's very, you know, it's people don't realize that it's not electronic. It's not. There's no electronics. They're actually hitting, if you open it up, these tines, these like metal things.
Tines, yeah. It makes it sound so
It's
funky.
Crazy. Yeah. And they always have like a musty smell to them. They always like smell like the 70s. Gross. It's great.
Yeah, they smell like a cigarette.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's what that album is about. And I've gotten it, you know, a lot of those, speaking of arranging, a lot of those songs have now been arranged for full symphony orchestra, which I did not do, because I play at symphonies a lot now. And some of these songs that are from also the other album, the Impossible album as well, they are arranged for other scenarios because, like we were mentioning, you can play one song several different ways.
Sure.
And you know, Casey Abrams is on that album,
nice,
as a
Love
duet,
Casey.
And so is Dave Koz, and so a couple special guests there. And yeah, that's what that one was.
Cool. Okay. So then now, are you gonna take this time to write more, or do you think you're gonna just take a break? Because that's valid too, you know.
Both are happening. Both are definitely happening. I think I'm a fast-paced person.
Absolutely.
I get a little bit tired. I suppose they call us introverts. That's what they say. So my energy comes from being alone. So I'm actually really enjoying this, and I needed it. I really did need it. But I'm not an inactive person. I'm a very active person. So I find myself learning a bunch of new things right now, like how to set up a camera better because we're suddenly in our homes and I can't see anybody in person and that kind of stuff. And you can go down a rabbit hole. So I'm taking this time to learn a lot of new skills. And I'm also playing. I feel like I need to play with music again. Not for the sake of writing it and not for the sake of even performing it. I just need to play with music again. That's what I did as a kid, and that's why I'm able to even have anything to show anybody now. And so I'm sitting around like I just wrote a reharm jazz vocal quartet version of the ABCs.
Wow.
The children's song, ABC, like the alphabet song. So it's silly and
you're
it's dumb.
You're finding way too much to do in this quarantine.
Yeah, but I needed to do it because I just needed to get it out. So I'm doing stupid things like that. But I also I'm projecting the next thing. So yes, I am planning my next album. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And it's going to be awesome. And it's going to be, I'll just say this, it's going to be very jazzy. I'll say that. It's going to be.
It's the jazzy side of Aubrey Logan.
It's going to be the jazziest side yet.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, I know that we're all going to be looking forward to that. I can't wait to hear it. Great. So let's we're going to get into some more discussion, but we'll end the main podcast here.
Cool.
But again, everybody go check out Aubrey's website. It's aubreyloggan.com. You can follow her on Instagram, everything. I think your socials are all Aubrey Logan. Is that correct?
They are.
That's
some
accurate.
of them are. Instagram is Aubrey_Logan, and so is Twitter. And Facebook is Aubrey Logan Music, and YouTube is Aubrey Logan Music. But AubreyLogan.com will take you to all of those.
There you go. That's the portal.
Yeah.
AubreyLogan.com.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Aubrey.
Thank you, Scott.